Thank you again. It's so lovely to be connected with the MBT community and folks from the Consciousness Hub. And it's nice seeing some familiar names and faces. Thank you guys for tuning in, especially on a Saturday. And I know that healing is always a popular topic, and I'm super grateful. So I've also been looking forward to this because Tom's work actually gave me the language that I didn't even know I was searching for. And the framework suddenly made sense after decades of my own intuitive psi phenomena and healing experiences that I had long before I even understood what they were. Before I became a doctor, before I studied energy medicine, before I ever guided the attunement meditation, and before I even had my near-death experience, I know that my consciousness was already tuned to something beyond the physical. And I bet many of you were too, right? Like every one of us has had moments where it seems like reality glitches, a dream that comes true, a feeling that we can't explain, some sort of a whisper that arrives even before the facts do. And for me, those kind of glitches weren't accidents. I see them as invitations. And eventually one of them cracked the simulation wide open. So I recently shared with the Consciousness Hub, you can find that on their YouTube channel, my experience with an out-of-body near-death experience. Today we're focused on the healing part. I'll share a little bit of that. It's just interesting because for most of my life, I was depressed. The first 3 decades of my life, I was terribly depressed, having been brought up in a very toxic household, and I always wanted to be elsewhere. Like some people just dissociate from their body. I wanted to just like be in the spirit realm. And as a teenager, I had dreams that would come true, like precognitive dreams, or I'd get these sudden surges in my chest right before something bad would happen. And I didn't know or think that it was intuition. I just thought that it was strange, especially because when I shared these things at school, other people looked at me like I was crazy, like they didn't have this going on as well. And so I kind of shut down a lot of the sort of paranormal experiences. But one day in medical school, I was preparing to leave, got downstairs to my motorcycle, and everything was normal. It was a normal day until something inside me. It wasn't a thought, it wasn't a fear, it wasn't even logic. It just was like, no, drive the car. So instead of taking the motorcycle, I drove to school. And that evening, I learned that my cousin had died in a motorcycle accident. And that was one of the first moments that I realized I was perceiving information before my intellect could. And then a few years later, I felt what people call chi, or even a kundalini rising, when I had an acupuncture session. I literally, in my medical school, I was, thinking I was going to do straight medicine. My mother was also a physician. And I happened to be doing a psychiatry rotation. And in this rotation, we saw people who were detoxing from drugs and alcohol. And I had a conversation with my mother, who is a physician in another state. She was the medical director of the Georgia Mental Health Institute. And part of her responsibility was to oversee the drug and alcohol ward. And as part of her continuing education, she got trained in something called the NADA protocol. I don't know if anyone here has done acupuncture or done these little ear acupuncture. Well, the NADA protocol is designed to help people detox as outpatients. So I said I had just done my psych rotation in the hospital, and I saw people who were in withdrawals. If you've seen any movies, if you've ever known someone who was detoxing, whether that's from alcohol or heroin or cocaine, it's not a pretty sight. Like the whole physiology is hard. And my mother was telling me that people could detox outside of the hospital. They were just getting these acupuncture needles. They were going to their 12-step groups, maybe going to therapy, but not in the hospital. And I'm like, that seems inhumane. Like, these people need all that support, right? Well, I got to go home and visit her over the Christmas holiday, and I didn't have any addiction issues, but I said, I want to experience this acupuncture healing thing. And so she put in the 5 needles plus an extra one, dimmed the lights, put me in a nice chair, played some soft music, and whoosh, I felt this surge of energy from like my solar plexus up to my head. It was intense. And then tears. Tears just came pouring down. And for any of you that have ever had acupuncture, then you know you're not injecting things with the acupuncture needles. They're hollow, right? I was having this real experience that I didn't have any words to explain. So I went back to my medical school and I convinced our dean, the late Dean Peck, to allow me to go to the Lincoln Hospital in the Bronx, where this pioneer, Dr. Michael Smith, was doing a whole training and helping people detox using this NADA protocol. And so it was approved. I spent 6 weeks in the Bronx, and I watched over 100 of these treatments. I performed these treatments and watched these people detox over a matter of weeks as outpatients. They had fewer cravings, fewer nightmares and drug dreams, more stability. And it was incredible to watch people transform through subtle energy and acupuncture. And it was there that I learned that children or babies could be treated, and sometimes not with the needles, but with their hands, like transmitting chi. So I was like, okay, this is a whole other category of healing that my medical school was not teaching me. So this really cracked open my worldview. In 1998, I graduated from Washington University School of Medicine, moved to Washington, D.C., where I did my training at Georgetown Medical Center. And then I was ready to start practicing, and I integrated Eastern and Western medicine. I opened an institute in Silver Spring, Maryland, just over the D.C. border, and we had this entire biopsychosocial approach to wellness. And it was using this sort of Chinese medical lens that I was taught, along with allopathic medicine, that I was starting to refine this sense of intuitive diagnostics. So it was not something that I talked about because, again, I had these leftover experiences from childhood where I thought people thought I was weird. And people did think I was weird. And opening this center in the year 2002 in the DC area, there weren't a lot of these kind of holistic centers. So I had to deal with a lot of criticism way back then. But I digress. So we're having pretty amazing success at this medical center, and I'll get into some specifics there for those of you that are interested. But just 5 years after being in this medical center, I actually was recruited by the Discovery Channel. So I was on TV as their medical director and spokesperson, doing documentaries and running this wellness center. And to all onlookers, it looked like everything was perfect. I was at the height of my career. I had been on Oprah a couple of times, published my first book, but I was really depressed and anxious because all these things that I was discovering by studying acupuncture, nutrition, mindfulness, breath work, Chinese medicine, I wanted to take that to television, and they weren't ready for it. The people at Discovery were just like, no, that sounds completely woo-woo, even though many of these things were already being published about. So I was feeling this pull between what was true for me versus what I had to portray on television. And that led me to feel very anxious and depressed. And ultimately, I wanted my life to be over. So 20 years ago, I happened to be in the south of France and had an opportunity to sort of shift timelines. And I had a near-death experience where I left my body. I was pulled into a white light and then into a tunnel of this all-consuming, blissful peace and oneness. There was no me, it was just oneness. And then I sort of landed in this void, and I did experience myself as a single point of consciousness. And there was like this disc of darkness of the void kind of going out. It was peaceful, it wasn't scary. But I could see that as this disc was moving, it was like erasing the old PMR data stream. And I found myself in this moment of recognition that when that void extends, I will be no longer. And I was like, wait, if I will be no longer, then who am I? Who is saying this? And that's when I heard, I am that I am. I am whoever I say I am. And that kind of landed, and then all of a sudden, there was a life review. And I could see how every decision in my life led me to be completely depressed. There was a figure next to me, some sort of a being, very peaceful. And above, I saw this big ball of light. I consider it like source consciousness, divine consciousness. And there were these little droplets of that light, these little spheres. And when they dropped down into human bodies on earth, that's when I saw that it's up to that soul to say who they are, to determine who they are. Not their religion, not the American Medical Association, not even our parents. And I saw that we are actually not separate. We come from this ball of light and we really are the light. I saw that our intention changes the field. And when I got all of that sort of as a download, I said to this being, okay, I get it now. I get to choose. I can go back. And that's when I saw a future vision. I saw that I was living in France. I was walking hand in hand with a child, singing, healing with my hands. At the time, I was 34 and single, so it kind of felt a little impossible at the time, but it looked so beautiful that I said yes. And instantly, I was back in my body, in my hotel. The depression was gone. And here I am today, living inside of that vision. And I know when people hear experiences like this, the light, the life review, that perception of information, there's a question that naturally comes up. Like, is it literal? Is it symbolic? Were you imagining this? I was not on any psychedelics. But what I have come to understand, and what really aligns with the big theory of everything, is that imagination is one of the ways that consciousness renders non-physical data. And so the measure isn't how dramatic the imagery is. The measure is whether the information aligns with reality and leads to lasting positive change. And in my case, it did. After that, I became super sensitive, even more than I already was. And I could sense people, family members, friends. I was, living in France. Eventually, I moved in 2010. And I was picking up on people back in America. One time with my daughter, she was in Mexico and I was in Italy. And I could feel or sense like where a person's pain was stored in their body or their energy field. I had an experience where I accidentally took on someone's like psychological break, and then later found that I was doing a sort of Tonglen, this Buddhist practice of taking and giving. And then one of the turning points was in 2011, where Greg Braden, I'm sure that you've heard of Greg Braden, he introduced me to something called Zhineng Qigong. It's a system that was developed in China by Dr. Peng Ming, and it integrates meditation, spatial consciousness, intention, and field-based healing. And the science behind it fascinated me. Healing is consciousness updating information through the field. So I don't know if you've ever heard of Zhineng Qigong or maybe even seen the video of a bladder cancer that gets shrunk in real time. I'm going to show it to you. Donna, just let me know if you can see this video. No, we don't. Yeah, you could do that if you want to just pop it over. So, what you're seeing here are some Qigong masters in China, and they're at what is called a medicineless hospital. So, there's no medicine, there's no surgery at this hospital. People were recommended to go there if they were like hopeless cases. So, what you're seeing now is the ultrasound tech, the woman, is scanning this man's abdomen, and you can see that he's got a tumor. So, she freezes the image on the left, and so that you can see how big the tumor was. And then they begin sending qi and chanting certain words, like dissolve, go away, which is hua sang. And you'll see on the right that this tumor is going to start to shrink. So the left will be the frozen image that she does a freeze frame, and the right image is what's happening in real time. So the practitioners, I'll give you guys the link if you want to see it and actually hear them chanting. They weren't chanting a single mantra. They were cycling through certain informational commands. Phrases like mais le, meaning gone, or hua san, meaning dissolve. So it wasn't that they were praying for a miracle, but you can see it's disappearing on the right? They weren't hoping that something was going to shift. They were issuing precise data instructions into the information field. So mais le literally means gone or finished or no more. So pretty remarkable, and you can even see them clapping about it. So for me, seeing that was really mind-blowing, especially as I started to learn that saying these words and imagining things was sending instructions to the field and letting that pattern return so that it was changing the man's body. So it's like the energetic equivalent of saying, like, this no longer holds shape, return to original chi. So what you see in the video, it's not magical thinking, it's not superstition, it's consciousness issuing these clean, coherent, moment by moment instructions, and then the field updating accordingly. And so for me, this is what Tom's MBT principles describe. When our internal signal is clear and the intent is coherent, the larger consciousness system can render a different probability. So what they were chanting wasn't causing the healing, the information was. And so that realization is what eventually led me to something even deeper, and that is patterns that I saw across medicine, trauma work, and energy healing that became the backbone of my life's work. So I'll tell you just a little bit more about this pattern that I saw, and we'll have time for questions. And I'd like to actually lead you in a practice today so that you can experience tapping into this field. So one of the things I mentioned about this wellness center, I was running a large outpatient program for binge eating disorder. And there's something really striking that I saw. I could have two patients that had similar trauma histories, pretty much the same resources, the same diagnosis, the same therapy, and yet their healing outcomes would be completely different. For example, one would rise or bounce forward with post-traumatic growth, while the other would relapse, sabotage, or stay stuck. There wasn't a difference in intelligence. It wasn't commitment. It wasn't even the severity of their trauma. The difference was internal. This is the pattern that I picked up so early in my medical career. Some people carried a deep subconscious belief: I'm unworthy. I'm unlovable. It's not safe to be well. Or my suffering keeps me connected, protected, or significant. So these unconscious identity wounds shape their behavior, their healing, and their ability to receive help. So that was one of the foundational insights that led me to create the Cornerstone process, which is a 5-step framework that uses this biopsychosocial, spiritual, and environmental framework to really understand what lies beneath all of the programming. Because if a person's self-concept is still wired for the victim identity, unworthiness, or shame, no intervention is going to override that contradiction. And so I started studying this Qigong practice when I moved to France, and I had some fun as I was practicing. If you ever watch any of these videos on YouTube, you'll see that we do a preliminary practice of just sort of gathering energy or qi, right? And we're just tuning in for ourselves, like really making sure that we're good before we work with anyone. And I remember practicing this, and my daughter, I guess, was probably 6 at the time. And she was like, "What are you doing, Mom? Like, you look weird." And I said, "Well, I'm learning how to gather this qi so that I could do this healing thing." And she said, "Oh, really?" And she looked a little skeptical. So I was like, "Well, I've seen that, my teacher can like send qi to people. So let me send some qi to your hand if you're willing." And she's like, "Okay." So she holds up her hand, and I send the qi, and she yanks her hand away and is like, "Ow." And I'm like, "Are you just trying to make me feel good? Like, what?" And she was like, "No, that hurt." So I was like, "Are you serious?" She could really feel it. She almost didn't want to let me practice on her anymore. But there were a few times where she was like really tense, and she had a lot of tension in her shoulders. And I was like, "Just let me try again." So I remember trying this practice on her, and she was like, "Mom, it's still too strong." And she's the one that gave me this image. She said, "You know how when we go up to the mountains, we go to this Buddhist center here in France, and sometimes in the morning there's like that mist that you can see over the mountain." And she's like, "I want you to imagine that the qi that you're gathering is that mist, and just be gentle with it." And I'm like, okay. It worked. Just that imagination of not like directing laser beams helped. So shortly after I'm practicing and getting better with this, there were a couple of other examples that were really striking. One is this runner and adventurer from Wales. His name is Derry. I was in the UK giving a talk, and so was Derry. And my talk was about acupuncture and healing and these sorts of things. And after my talk, he looked at me and he was like, "Hey, Doc, I don't really buy all that energy stuff, but I need some help." And I'm like, "What's going on?" Well, he described having this really bad not quite plantar fasciitis, but the bottom of his feet, or one foot, was really, really giving him trouble. Now, this is a man who had been on Kilimanjaro and several other mountains. He'd done the Marathon des Sables, Ironman, and he was really frustrated because the doctors couldn't figure out what was going on. Would he need surgery? And he didn't believe in energy healing. He literally thought it was nonsense. Because when I was, on stage, he couldn't wrap his head around it. But here's the interesting thing. He has 3 daughters, and I remember seeing him on the break get a message from his daughter, and his face lit up. I don't know if they sent like an image or a joke or something. And so when we were walking from the conference hall through to the lobby, I said, "Listen, you know how when a cute message comes in from your daughter, or you see this picture of her doing something goofy, and you feel a certain kind of way. You feel warm or whatever. Just like, anyone here, when your in-laws call or your boss calls, it can create an energy change in your body, right? Or when someone sends you a lovey-dovey message, that can affect you. So when I explained it to him like that, I'm like, that's energy. If it changes your heart rate, it changes your energy. That's energy. So that little opening just softened him enough to say, okay. So I offered to do acupuncture or Qigong. And honestly, I thought he was going to roll his eyes again. But we got into a space in the hotel, and I did a very brief Qigong session. And I told him, okay, we're here in the same place. I'll keep sending Qi and doing this deliberate healing practice over the next 2 days while we're here at the conference. Just take it easy, just take it easy on your foot. Great. The next morning, I opened up the group chat. This was even before breakfast to kind of see who was awake. And he typed into the chat, hey, everyone, this Dr. Pennington, I think, is an angel. I just ran 5 miles pain-free. And I was like, dude, I told you to not use the foot. But he said normally the pain would come on at mile 3 and he'd have to stop. So this was kind of a moment of confirmation for me that this wasn't placebo, right? This was information-based healing consistent with MBT principles. And Derry and I had a special connection like a year later during the earthquake in Nepal. So I'll share that at another time because there's a lot there. But just as I was preparing to speak with you all today, I checked in with Derry. We're now 11 years after that magical healing. He is still pain-free, never had to have surgery, didn't do any injections, still running up mountains. And so we might ask, why did it work for him? I believe it's because he didn't have internal resistance at the identity level. Doesn't matter that he was skeptical. He didn't identify with his suffering. And he didn't have any secondary gain or benefit of being hurt. He didn't have a belief that he deserved pain. So another example of this was a man in Amsterdam who called me up because he had been bedridden for several weeks with severe back pain. Now, this guy is somebody I knew as super active. He was young, early 40s. He played golf every week. And I was like, what happened? So he didn't have any injury. He didn't have a fall. He couldn't even figure out what had gone wrong. But he did go to a doctor who said, I think we're going to have to operate. So they had done some scans of his back, and the next week he was going in for surgery. So over the weekend, I get this call and I'm like, all right, well, are you open to the idea of remote healing? And he's like, never had it, never heard of it. And I was like, well, all I want you to do is just get into a meditation state. And he's like, I don't meditate. I'm like, wait, but you do yoga. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, you know how when you're laying in Shavasana, corpse pose at the end of your yoga, just be in that state, that same kind of open, receptive state. So I said, all right, we'll do that at 9 o'clock after I put my kid to bed. So I do the remote healing session as I'd been taught, and I'm getting myself in a state, connecting to this field of chi, and then directing it in a very specific pattern. And I heard my computer ringing, the Skype ring, back in the days of Skype. And I'm like, oh no, it's going to wake up my kid. So I grab the computer and it's him. And I'm like, what's going on? He said, what did you do? And I'm like, oh snap. I don't even know if I was really allowed to be doing this yet. So I was like, well, what did you experience? He said, this is the first time I've been able to get up from the bed and go to the bathroom. What did you do? And I said, tell me what you experienced. And the crazy thing is, he told me point by point of everything I did, he experienced, including something that I didn't tell him about because it's actually not part of the protocol. I kind of like sealed it with a kiss, if you can imagine. I'm in France, he's in Holland. Well, his pain was gone. He did go to the doctor the next day. They gave him the new MRI. The radiologist is like, I don't see anything that requires surgery. And weren't you in a wheelchair last time? And he's like, you don't look like you're in pain. So he didn't tell the doctor that he had this Qigong treatment, but they didn't have to operate. That was over 10 years ago. And I confirmed with him last week, he is still pain-free. He is still playing golf several times a week. He has not needed surgery that the doctors recommended. And he never got any injections or anything like that. So these two cases really taught me something essential. So, as I said, to me, it's not placebo. But people often ask, does this only work for people who believe? Well, the Welsh runner didn't believe. And the man in Amsterdam didn't really believe. But the larger consciousness system, source, doesn't respond to belief alone. It responds to intent and identity alignment. So if there's no internal contradiction, there's no victim narrative or no hidden benefit to staying in pain, quite often the system says yes. The larger consciousness system responds to the net effect of your intent. So if consciously you want healing, but subconsciously you're carrying unworthiness or shame or fear or an identity tied to suffering, then the net intent is incoherent. And quite often the healing doesn't land like it should or could. And so when people hear, these ideas about placebo or belief or expectation, was it just positive thinking? Almost always no. But here's the nuance. Expectancy isn't just a thought. What you expect creates a physiologic state. So if you look at modern neuroscience, it shows us that our nervous system is actually a prediction machine. It forecasts the future before the mind even has time to think. So your body, through your senses, constantly checks in. Is this safe? Is this dangerous? What's about to happen next? And then it prepares you for the answer. So if somebody has lived through pain, trauma, some long-term illness, their body often predicts collapse. It's not because they're negative. It's because their physiology believes it's protecting them. And so this is something I call destiny neuromechanics. It's the way that expectation, the body or somatics, and consciousness actually shape the timeline that your system aims for or votes for. So here's why this matters for healing. Healing lands most easily when the body and the nervous system isn't expecting a threat. So it's not just when a person believes in it. It's not when they're trying to manifest it. Not when you're just thinking positively. But when the identity and the nervous system aren't actively bracing against something. So this is how the larger consciousness system responds to the net effect of your intent. And that includes these subconscious identity patterns and not just your conscious desire. So hopefully that makes sense to some of you here. So I find that the skeptical people often heal faster than people who desperately want to believe, because the skeptic isn't necessarily bracing. They're not over-efforting as long as they can be neutral or open. And so this is one of those principles that's also taught in this Zhineng Qigong. Our intent only works when the subconscious agrees. When the identity says yes, when the internal environment is coherent, right? So often what we call the placebo is actually just a temporary moment where the body allows your identity to soften. The field becomes coherent and the LCS can update the information. So that's physics. That's just consciousness doing what consciousness does. So all of these principles, expectation altering physiology, identity as the gatekeeper, intent as the field shaping force, these are exactly the mechanics of Zhineng Qigong, just taught in a different language. So Dr. Pong Ming called it qi and information, like Taoism. MBT calls it data and probability. But it's all describing the same mechanism. It's consciousness that instructs the field, and the field instructs the body. So it's not just energy medicine and metaphysical theory that supports the idea that consciousness shapes reality. There's also really good science. Way back in 1979, some of you have probably heard of the counterclockwise study. Well, Ellen Langer took a group of men in their 70s and moved them to a house that had been transformed to look exactly like it was 1959. The music playing, the way things are decorated, the magazines, even black and white television. And she instructed them to act as if they were 20 years younger. Live like it's 1959. Speak like it's 1959. Think like it's 1959. And the results were amazing. After just 1 week, many of these men, some of them who had stiff joints or poor posture, poor eyesight or hearing problems, they showed measurable physical and cognitive improvements. They had increased flexibility, better posture, improved hearing and vision, sharper memory, and better movement. And when they had people look at photographs of them before and after, people who were blind to the experiment, they said that many of these men appeared younger in their 1 week photo. And what Ellen Langer's work demonstrates is that when identity, belief, and embodied expectation shift, the body responds. Not because of a pill, not because of surgery, but because the system updates. I'm not saying you can't use pills or surgery. It's just that this principle that I've seen in healing, in energy medicine, and consciousness work is all about our innate vitality code. The body has its own capacity to return to baseline, homeostasis. The body has an innate capacity for repair and renewal, and it always remains intact. What changes over time is the architecture of expectation, identity, and our nervous system tone. So when chronic stress or trauma or identity rewires our system for safety or scarcity or pain, then the default becomes resistance. The body braces, the mind contracts, and then the field becomes noisy, and healing becomes slower or stalled. So when we shift the internal environment through somatic regulation, that can be through a number of different practices, identity recoding, and conscious intent, we open the door for the system to remember what it knew all along: health, wholeness, and possibility. So if someone's body doesn't respond just to the medicine or technique, it's responding to expectation, identity, their internal signal. So that's what this counterclockwise study shows. Not magical thinking. It's plausible. It's neurophysiological. So when we work with practices like Qigong or attunement recoding, or simply anchor to new identity frames, we're not chasing placebo or wishful thinking. We're aligning our inner system so it can receive the natural orders of healing and possibility that always exist in the field. So I thought this would be helpful just for you to have a sense of how I've seen healing in my own life and in my practice, and why I'm really excited about using Qigong along with the energy healing techniques that go along with the cornerstone process. So I mentioned this cornerstone process. It's a 5-step framework that I developed 20 years ago to really help people transform their identity structures. And it's really been the through line of my clinical work, my retreats, my private sessions. And it's outlined in the Real Self-Love Handbook, this book that I published. This is what has helped people recover from addiction and burnout and cancer. It's what I used after my near-death experience. So we go through these steps of awareness, like finding out how we've been programmed, our beliefs, our family imprints, intergenerational imprints, the environment. And then we move to step 2, which is acceptance. And that's softening resistance around the old stories and accepting things for what they are, releasing the shame and blame if we can. Then we move into accountability, which is all about reclaiming a sense of sovereignty and taking back one's power. Then inspired action, which allows you to act from your future self identity instead of your wounded identity. And then appreciation. I have other videos on YouTube where you can see me breaking these down, but just one way for you to think of what the cornerstone process does is it clears the unconscious contradictions that would block healing from happening. So I found that when a person's identity is coherent and their physiology is coherent, healing becomes easier. Whether they're using meditation, talk therapy, Qigong, psychedelics, or consciousness work. So that is a little bit about the process. I would love to lead a guided attunement meditation, but first I'm open to questions. What has sparked off your curiosity here? And then I'll take you through the attunement recoding.
Is this why you do RE Code Lab, to change these identity level expectations with evidence and remove this type of obstacle? Thank you.
Oh, yes. Thank you for the question. Yes, as part of the Consciousness Hub, I am offering a monthly session called the Recode Lab. And in that lab, each month you create your own experiment that you're going to test out. And yes, that's why we start at really figuring out who you are. Who do you think you are? Because your beliefs are what are going to be driving your life. And if you were to change something in the laboratory, just like a good scientist would, you're going to be checking certain variables and following up so that you can start becoming the architect of your own destiny, whether that's for healing, whether it's for manifesting good luck, practicing remote viewing or whatever. The Recode Lab is that. So we meet on the third Wednesday of the month if you'd like to join us.
Thank you very much. This is absolutely fantastic. And I am straddling still between reason and intuition, so please forgive me. And since you're a Buddhist practitioner as well, one of the things that I've encountered in this process is the concept of the karmic debt that we bring in from incarnation to incarnation, and that we have to pay it somehow, to some extent or another. So I wonder if you can comment on what are those energies, for example, and how we manifest them, and how much can we actually process them in a more efficient way with your experience?
Oh, thank you for this question. I love this. What about karma or life lessons? I've heard that a lot. It's such an important question. I find that healing doesn't interfere with our life lessons. Healing or a healing journey can often reveal the lesson. So in MBT terms, karma isn't punishment. Just in Buddhism, it's not really punishment. Karma is just, action, reaction. There's a fruit from all of our action. And if you look at it in MBT terms, it's just feedback. It's the natural consequence of your choices, your fears, your growth path. Whether you think that includes past lives or not, doesn't matter. So if we're working on healing, we're in my way of thinking, we're not skipping the lesson. We're allowing the lesson to be learned through the healing process. So I often think that with karma, if this was something that happened, that you planted a seed for this to evolve in your physical reality, whether that was in this lifetime or another, our traditions all say that we just need to balance that karma. So it's not just a matter of just doing good deeds. It's also, how do you show up So, of course, keep doing good deeds, right? Be kind, be loving, because that generates what we call merit or positive karma, right? But it's also like in gamer terms, you could look at you've spawned into an avatar that has a health challenge. No matter how we're going to say that challenge got there, whether it was a karmic imprint or what have you. But what you're really here to do is to be the consciousness that operates the avatar. And so the question is, how will you show up in the face of this health challenge? Just like the Buddha or the Christ was challenged with all these other temptations, right? For some of us, it's an addictive thing. For some of us, it's a physical thing. In my case, it was depression that I had to work with for 3 decades. So I find that it can be an entry point to balancing that karma and showing what level of consciousness we want to bring to it. The other thing that I'll say is that some people will say, well, if it's my karma, then maybe I'm never going to get past this disease or what have you. Maybe I'm going to die with it. That may be. Not all of us can tell that. But what I can say is the quality of your consciousness will be imprinted, if you will, in how you respond and deal with it. Because on one level, we have to accept that we're all going to die, right? I mean, this physical body is not going to live forever, but my consciousness will move into another form. And whatever I am bringing, those karmic imprints, that's what's going to go with my consciousness when I leave this avatar. And so you might get better, or you might find that through working with being present with your illness, learning from it, practicing these different things like meditation or Qigong or chanting, Tonglen, being of service, you may find that your suffering is decreased. And that's really crucial. Because if you can be in a body that's ailing and not be overwhelmed with the suffering, that's a win in and of itself.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for being here.
What a beautiful presentation, Dr. Deus. It's just so valuable for this group, especially how you presented your evidence and the documentation that is important to you. Absolutely wonderful. Do we have more questions for her or observations? How did you receive this information?
I can say something.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So yes, I agree with Dana and everyone else here. It was a wonderful presentation. You have validated a lot of my own experience. So thank you for sharing all of that. And what I wanted to ask you is, you say that you suffered from depression for 3 decades. Does the depression ever come back to you?
No, not to the extent that I literally wanted my life to be over. The first time that happened, I was a teenager. I was 14, and the depression was so bad that I wanted to end my life. And as I was contemplating it, I heard a voice tell me, if you kill yourself, you might come back at a lower level. But hold on, you're going to get through this. I didn't know any Buddhists or Hindus. Nobody talked about reincarnation in my family, but I believed it, and I stuck around. It wasn't until I had that near-death experience where I left my body and I understood why I was depressed. I was depressed not because of some biochemical imbalance, but because of all the choices I had made based on my trauma upbringing that led me to be depressed. I was depressed because I wasn't living true to myself. I was always molding and folding myself to fit, to not get whipped. So I did everything my dad told me, to be acceptable in the media, to be acceptable in the medical world. And so I haven't ever experienced that level of depression again. I've had sadness, of course. My mother transitioned and I grieved. I do experience sadness. And the last 2 years with just all of the war and genocide and stuff, it's been very, very hard as I'm a sensitive person, but not to that level.
Yeah, I share that. I am very sensitive as well, and what I have went through recently was kind of a rediscovering of how I actually formed my beliefs. I went down the path of memories. I had a traumatic experience recently that have prompted these revelations. What I did was I was sitting with the actual pain that I was feeling right now at the moment from the situation that was happening, but I was actually going back in time and seeing how this pain relates to the memories in the past. And that's how I was able to unwind my belief systems. But I do notice that it doesn't completely go away, because what I've seen is that once the programming is set in those early days, it just runs on the subconscious, and it takes awareness to be able to notice it. Most people don't have that kind of awareness, and it takes practice to be able to see it. So I suffered with depression as well. I've had lots of moments in my life where I felt like I wanted to end my life. So that's why I asked you about the depression, if it ever comes back, because for me now it's, yes, I do feel pain, but I learned how to hold the pain. I no longer run away from it. I no longer try to numb it. I no longer try to avoid it. Now I just allow it to be and view it as another experience. And what I started to do with it, I started to transform it into music.
Oh, that's something I'm doing as well. Do you sing? Do you write?
So cool.
Do you write music? Do you play music?
I write lyrics, and then I use AI to help me with the music and the vocals.
Oh, excellent. I love it. That's beautiful. Transmuting it. So you're absolutely right. That awareness is the first step of the cornerstone process. And in the meditation that I'll lead in just a few minutes, the first step of that is allow. And that's exactly what you did. You allowed yourself to be with the pain, to like not run away from it, to face it, and to allow yourself to go back and see where did it come from. That is exactly what we do in the Recode Lab, in the Cornerstone process, in my private sessions. Because you're right, once you can see where the imprint came from, if it was this lifetime, or I've had clients tell me that their stuff happened in past lives. But once you see it, what is most important is not just the awareness, that helps, but then it's the recoding. Because as you are able to see, and you didn't use any language where you associated with your body or your disease, that's so key. That's why I don't like people to say, I'm a diabetic. It's like you're making that your identity. No, you're not. You are consciousness in a body that maybe has diabetes or high blood pressure or whatever. Because as soon as you start collapsing the identity in one small way, it tends to branch into other ways that limit your ability. And so you're having that awareness, and awareness means you're conscious, which means you're starting to tune into, wait a minute, who's in this body?
I'll give you an example for the awareness for what you just described on how you actually have to unwind it. For example, I was stopped. I was driving to a doctor's and I was stopped by a police for speeding. I didn't know it was the school zone. I had no idea. I never drive through that area, and I was just going 35. It wasn't that fast. So anyway, so as I got stopped, he's coming over, asking me for the license and this, and immediately I am feeling within my body this ache, and I'm like, what is happening? And it because I've done this work now, it comes to me pretty fast, and it was about making a mistake. And I just kept sitting there and saying, it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to make a mistake. And then I felt my body to relax, because it's that trauma that I have learned in the past that making a mistake is going to mean punishment. So that's where this unsafety is. So that's how you unwind it.
Yes, yes. That's beautiful. Using self-talk, that's one of the things that we use. We bring in all of the senses and create like basically customized recoding So what you did in the moment is you're recoding the subconscious, that part of you that associates making a mistake with punishment. So your words are recoding, or you did it in real time, which usually helps those parts believe you, because sometimes our younger parts do not believe us. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing all of this, Ursula.
I just wondered how this Cornerstone program can work in remote healing for those who may not be on the same, uh, they're not into MBT, or they're not that they're not spiritual, but that, uh, they need healing, they want healing, but there's something that's not letting it through. And like we do remote healing every Saturday and on Wednesdays for people. We put our lists in the chat, and many of these people don't know we're doing this. And so I've just kind of had this idea that my higher self will talk to their higher self, and then, somehow whatever's supposed to happen will happen. And I just wonder what your thoughts are on that. Do they have to be present? Do they have to know that about some of these things before allowing these things to happen?
Yes, yes, those are excellent questions. Thank you for that. So, in my experience, everyone has different abilities, people who facilitate healing. And I don't personally call myself a healer. I just make it easier for people by creating a field where people can heal, or the body knows how to heal, it knows how to tune into the field. So, no, the person does not have to be in the same physicality. Like I described this person in Holland, and I was in France when I did that first distance healing. So, no. If someone is, we often do talk about, should you do this if you don't have consent? So, usually you want to have consent. Why? If we think about it, source consciousness really honors autonomy and intent. So, in MBT terms, the larger consciousness system isn't going to override someone's free will or even the lessons that they're here to learn. The healing can happen, it has to be congruent with their growth path. And even if you send healing intent, if their subconscious says, I'm not ready, or I don't feel safe, or this symptom actually protects me, then it's very likely that their system won't accept the healing update. You can always send compassion, but that's not going to override their internal alignment. So I can send love, I can send clarity or coherence to the field around someone. You can hold the vision of them experiencing their highest possibility or a sense of relief. But I can't force integration. The person or their deeper consciousness has to opt in. In some traditions, people would say that trying to do healing without consent is unethical. But you can always aim your intention at a situation and not a person. And you can also just support the field without imposing any change. It's almost like just wishing a person good luck. Like, may all of the lights be green so that you get to where you're going on time. You know what I'm saying? Or may you get through this illness with the least amount of suffering. And that can have an effect. So maybe I'll take one more question before I'll lead a guided attunement.
Hi. So I'm at Twin, Switzerland. Lovely to see you again.
Yes, and you as well.
So now I'm concerned because I do have people on my list that I did not ask their permission. But what I do is I have this I call it my healing ritual. And at the end of my ritual, I just, I say, everybody that's on the list, I wish for you well-being, good health, peace, hope, love, joy, and happiness. And at the end, I say, for all of those that wish to accept and receive it. I'm hoping that that's a good disclaimer, because I don't want to take people off my list.
No, you don't have to take anyone off your list. What I want to maybe come back to and drill in on is your intent. So your intent, the way you phrase it is beautiful. Like you're wishing them love, you're wishing them outcomes. The outcome of love, of peace, joy, and happiness for those who are willing to accept it. You're not saying, I want this person to stop doing this drug and to be this kind of way, as if you're directing their fate or destiny. And so that wish coming from a place of love, and not control, and not fear, the larger consciousness system, I would say, can jive with that and can direct that. And, we do that in so many different practices, with that caveat that we're doing this for their highest and best good, not our own, right?
Thank you. I feel much better now.
Yeah.
I was panicking.
Yeah. No panic. Yeah, it all comes back to our intent. Let's do this with love. I mean, right now we need it. Our world is going through what I call the collective dark night of the ego. There's so many structures that are collapsing and dissolving, and the people in power are getting noisier and louder and scarier. And that is disruptive to the people who have been on the side of love and light. It's destabilizing as we feel the ground being ripped out beneath us. And so if we can work on our internal coherence and intend for the field that there be more love, that there be more conscious awareness in the field, that changes the quality of the field. People still have free will, but we can infuse, I was going to say infect, we can infuse the field with these desired frequencies by creating it within ourselves first. I will lead us now in the attunement meditation. I also have these on the Real Self-Love Movement. Each month I lead a guided attunement meditation and a discussion, and that's a beautiful way for you to tune into it. And I have this also as a download if you want to just download the guided meditation. But I'm going to lead it for us today, and I think that this will be a new experience. I already see some of the people from my own community are here, so thank you for joining me. Many of you know this. This will be a slightly different one because we're at the MBT event, so we get to tune into MBT physics and stuff. So this meditation, I invite you to make sure that you're able to be seated or lie down. I don't recommend this while driving or riding a bike, chopping vegetables. So you can always come back and watch the replay if now isn't a good time. So let's just all together take a deep breath in, really deep, filling your lungs. Filling, hold at the top. And then exhale through the mouth. Letting it go, and just allow yourself to sink into the chair, the mat, the floor, whatever is beneath you. And take another deep breath in, giving yourself permission to just be, and letting go of the tension. Allow yourself to just sink in as if you're leaning into the arms of a loving mother. No matter what your biological mother was like, this earth, great Mother Gaia, she welcomes you. So with your next breath in, just give yourself permission to release. And as you exhale, let go of tension. And just allow your body to settle into this present moment. Allow your nervous system to shift out of survival mode into openness. There's nothing to fix in this moment. Just witnessing. No pressure, just presence. As we take deep, deep breaths, we shift the body into our rest and digest, allowing your physiology to receive healing more efficiently. And we become the witness of this moment, present in this moment. We know that presence is the doorway into the larger field of consciousness. So with your next breath in and out, allow your body to soften and allow your awareness to just scan the body. As the witness, just imagine that there is a light above your head coming from the heavens, a vast open sky, and this gentle light drifts down. It comes in through the crown of your head, and it brings with it relaxing, peaceful energy. So just see this light as it glides down your scalp, relaxing tension. It flows and releases the muscles around your eyes, relaxing the tension between your eyebrows. And this peaceful light just flows down your face, relaxing your jaws. And with each breath, it glides down your throat, relaxing your tongue. It carries this gentle relaxation down your neck, releasing the tension as it flows down your shoulders, down your arms to your elbows, down your forearms, carrying relaxation to your wrists, and out through the palms of your hands, the back of your hands, carrying away tension out through the fingers and thumbs. And as you continue to breathe in this gentle light that just sprinkles down from the heavens, it flows, filling up your chest and your upper back, bringing waves of relaxation down your torso to your lower abdomen, down to the lower back, gently flowing to your pelvis and the seat of your pants. And just see if you can allow this light to flow as it flows down your thighs to your knees, carrying away tension down your shins and calves to your ankles, out through your heels and the soles of your feet. And that light sweeps away out through your toes and the tops of your feet. And just see that light flowing through your body without judging or being mad at it. Just notice if there's any tension. Did that light get stuck anywhere? If it did, just take another deep breath and imagine that more light can come in. That light is chi, elemental energy, that can go right to the muscle or the microtubules or the bone marrow to work out what needs to be worked out if you just allow. And now I invite you to gently turn inward and allow yourself to witness everything going on internally, allowing it to be exactly as it is. If there's mind wandering, allow it. If there's sleepiness, allow it. there's pain, just allow it to be there. If there's fear, allow that too. This is not giving up, it's not resignation, it's alignment. You're allowing yourself to be the witness of the truth of what is here in this present moment. You allow your consciousness to see the information that your body is sending you. You allow your awareness to become receptive. What if nothing in you is wrong? What if everything you feel is simply information? And that information can be updated. The next step is attune. Here we will tune into the frequency of loving kindness. So you can imagine that we invite into this safe space a figure that represents compassion. Imagine a being that has unconditional acceptance of you. It could be a loved one or a pet that's passed on. It could be a religious figure, a historical figure. It could be your higher self. Just imagine that there's a being that truly wants the best for you and is sending out energy from their heart to you. Could be an angel, a fairy. Just see that purity in their love. Just imagine that this being is sending out waves of loving kindness from their heart to you, and just see if you can receive it. You're stepping into a field where loving kindness exists. It always exists. And imagine that this being or your higher self sends these wishes to you in the form of energy from their heart to yours, as they say, may you know true happiness and the cause of happiness. And see if you can let that in. And just see that loving kindness flowing to you as they say, may you be free from suffering. May you be forever connected to the pure bliss that is free from suffering. May you live with grace and ease, free from attachment and aversion. And whether that energy is being directed to part of your body, an inner child, an inner rebel, just see if you can allow that to sink in. And with this open heart in this field of loving kindness, we move to step 3, which is align. And here we ask to align our minds with a higher state of consciousness. It's an invitation to the critical parts, the judging parts, even the wounded ego, to just let go of the beliefs and just open up to receive wisdom, insight, you're expressing an intent. May my mind be guided by love or truth, peace, beauty, wholeness. You might even ask for a wisdom figure to come forward, a spiritual ally, a wise woman, your own personal Yoda, an oracle, or just to the larger consciousness system, and just ask, what do I need to know or do for the next right step on my path? And just know that you'll receive the message, either as we meditate, as you're drifting off to sleep, in your dreams, or just as you're waking up. It could be through coincidences, little synchronicities, a song, an email, a book that arrives. Just know that when you've asked, if you remain open, keep your eyes out, you will receive. We move from this aligned mind into inspired action, where you may have asked for guidance, or you might just feel that you know what's coming next or what to do next. And so you can make a commitment to take inspired action for all these parts of you that want to experience this true healing and awakening. And the final step is appreciation. Imagine that you can send thanks to your compassion figures, your wisdom figures, any ancestors or allies that have shown up. Just thank them. Imagine that you can send loving kindness back to them in gratitude. You can direct some of that appreciation toward yourself, for your own courage and resilience, for your willingness to fully be present. And what else do you appreciate and have gratitude for? Might be a good Wi-Fi connection. To Keith and Donna and Jamie for hosting us. Gratitude for Tom. Your own spiritual posse. So now, with all of this appreciation, imagine that these figures that have been in this space, whether you've seen them or not, imagine that they dissolve into light, like a rainbow, like a hologram. And on your next breath in, imagine that you can breathe in that rainbow light into your heart, so that these precious beings are always connected at the heart space, one heartbeat away, one deep breath away. And now directing loving kindness toward your own heart, to yourself, to all of these parts that are within you, as you say, may I be truly happy. May I be free from suffering. May I be forever connected to the pure bliss that is free from suffering. May I live with peace and grace, free from attachment and aversion. As you let that loving kindness fill your heart, If you've got a little more to share, I invite you to send that loving kindness to everyone here in this community, to people watching the replay, to those close to you, to your nation, to the planet. So directing loving kindness from your heart outward, you say, may you know true happiness and the cause of happiness. May you be free from suffering. Just imagine, even for a moment, that they experience some relief, some peace. May you be truly well in body, mind, and heart. And may you live in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. So you can see that loving kindness rippling out across the world. And with your next breath in, I invite you to wiggle your fingers and toes. You might want to stretch a little bit. We're going to come back into this space. Thank you so much for meditating with me. I hope that this has been an interesting experience for you. If you need additional support, you can find me on the Consciousness Hub in the community. My website is wondrea.com, and I do offer private sessions if you need a little tune-up or a deep tune-up. Thank you again.
Thank you, Dr. Diaz. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. What an honor.
Oh, I appreciate that. Are there any other questions or anyone want to say if anything came up for you?
I
Thank you
just
for
stood up
all.
from my chair and my back does not hurt. And I have a back brace on that I took off while we were meditating and just tried standing up when we were complete. And so, yep,
Oh,
I guess I don't know if belief is the right word, but thank you very much.
You are so welcome. Thank you for sharing that. Wow.
lovely. Well, we are coming up to the hour in a while, and Leslie will be holding the global healing. I hope some of you can stay on. If not, we certainly appreciate your participation here, and thank you for treasuring Dr. Diaz's time and beautiful wisdom and grace and energy. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.